All right, looks like we're live. I'm just going to make some adjustments here. I don't know why Facebook looks so weird on my screen. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that I can see the comments when they come in. Okay, perfect. I would love to be able to get the green screen out, but I don't see. Yeah, I don't see how I can do that on Facebook. So I won't be able to do that on Facebook, but we are doing it live on YouTube as well. And what we're going to be doing is this on Facebook is just going to go straight live and then disappear when we're done. And on YouTube, the replay will be saved. We're going to be discussing a few items of interest. Oh my goodness, the world is moving so quickly, is it not? Feel free to comment, let me know where you're viewing from, and I'd love to make sure that this stays nice and interactive. So, leave your comments. We want this to be conversational. We're going to be talking about, as the descriptions, macroeconomics. Going to be talking about some geopolitical movements, something that has been talking. People are talking about this more now, and it's great. I'm glad that they're talking about it more. It's just they're talking like this is brand new information, and it simply isn't brand new information. It's simply now come to light as some of these these happenings are right in your face now. These are all things that we've been talking about would happen. I'm just going to try to adjust the background here on the YouTubes. These geopolitical movements have been happening for years and years and years, and what we're witnessing right now is kind of the culmination of these movements. If you've been following me a little bit on YouTube, you'll see that I do trading as well, and so having a handle on what's happening geopolitically, economically is really important because it helps you determine some positions that you can take with your finances. So what we're going to be talking about are the things that people have questions about. So first of all, we have to go back in time, back to the 70s. The United States decoupled their currency from gold, and nothing wrong with that. I mean, that lets you just print money to oblivion, and you're not limited to how much gold you have in reserves, because now those currency notes are not used for exchanging a metal, right? So now you can do whatever you want. That's great. However, that meant that now they're going to have an inflation issue because it's not coupled to anything. So what was going on at that time? Well, we were drilling oil like you wouldn't believe. In fact, oil was becoming so abundant at that time. It was the cheapest it had ever been. I'll give you an example. There was, hey Nicole, good to see you there. There was this, because of how much oil was coming out of the ground, it was easy. It was simple. It didn't cost much. It was cheap. They called it cheap oil or peak oil. And what did that mean? Well, it wasn't necessarily the price. A lot of people think, well, the price was good. The price was good. There's no question. However, what peak oil meant was you could spend or exert a certain amount of energy and get a lot in return. That was what was peak oil. So for instance, to produce oil, you have to do exploration, you have to do drilling, you have to do testing, there's tons of production work, sending it down the line, there's delivery, all of this stuff. All of these things contribute to amount of energy used to have that barrel of oil now on the market. Well, at the time, it was about 1 barrel of oil consumed for every 100 barrels of oil produced. That was a good return. That's why it was called peak oil. You got a lot of oil for a little barrel of oil. Now, as time went on, that's gone down. I mean, let's take a look, for example, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. You could take a stick poke it into the ground in Saudi Arabia and have beautiful, sweet crude oil coming out of it. And you could take that and put it in your vehicle. Like, it was just beautiful. Hardly had to refine it. It was so simple to get that oil out of the ground and onto the market. But even now in Saudi Arabia, they're doing offshore drilling. Well, why would they do that if the oil was right there in the desert? Well, it's because it's not easy to get to anymore. And here's the thing: I am not going to say the oil is going to last forever. It could or the oil isn't going to last forever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's getting harder to drill. It's harder to produce. It's harder to look at Alberta. So as time has gone on, I think it was towards the end of the 90s, it was a barrel of oil only brought you about 30 barrels of oil worth of energy. And so that was getting smaller and smaller. And the gentleman that came up with the idea of this, peak oil, this discovery that he made was that we were no longer in peak oil by 1976. By that time, it was actually starting to diminish. The amount of returned energy, the amount of energy that you were getting out of return was dropping. And so that is the end, marked the end of peak oil. And that gentleman said, it doesn't matter what the price is. You could have a $5 barrel of oil. You could have a $500 barrel of oil. It doesn't matter what the price of oil is. The moment that it reaches a 1-to-1, all production will stop. If there is no return of energy, there is no point in going and getting the energy. It doesn't matter what the price of oil is. So, what happened in the 70s? The US dollar needed to have something to back it because it didn't have gold anymore, and they were going to experience hyperinflation because they were printing so crazy. So they said, whoa, wait, let's couple this to oil. Let's make this a currency that is backed by oil because it's the most incredible thing out there right now. It's abundant, and we can back it, and it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. Well, but what they wanted to be able to do that was, next thing they wanted was a cheap source of oil because, they wanted to get the best, the best and the cheapest oil they possibly could. Well, where was that? Middle East. So that's where they set their sights. Now, in order to accomplish that, the United States had to make a deal. And the deal was with Saudi Arabia. And what they did was that they agreed. Saudi Arabia and America agreed. America said, we would love to have oil at such a beautiful price that no one could possibly compete with us anymore. And Saudi Arabia was like, why would we do something like that? And the U.S. said, well, because we're going to have you be able to employ the might of the U.S. military whenever you want. So Saudi Arabia said, okay, sounds good. Because they're in a very high conflict area. Wouldn't it be something if one of those countries just happened to have the military might of the United States of America protecting them? That'd be pretty good. Well, that was the arrangement. And in the 70s, the United States, began their quest to dominate the oil in the Middle East. That was the thing. And everywhere they went, every place they invaded ever since then, was to bring democracy and, of course, collect the oil. Send it over to Saudi Arabia, and then they would refine it because it was super good stuff to have, and then put it on tankers and bring it over to America. That's how that went. America has enjoyed incredibly cheap oil this entire time. And yeah, in exchange, they provided military support to Saudi Arabia to protect their land, to protect the oil fields, to protect all of their wonderful, great, cheap oil. Folks, that peak oil is very, very expensive. In Alberta right now, the exchange is 1 to 8. So 1 barrel of oil will produce 8 barrels of oil. Even in the 70s, it was like 1 to 80. So we are quickly approaching that 1-to-1 ratio. Now, again, I'm not saying that oil is going to disappear. In fact, it won't. In fact, it actually is renewable, believe it or not. But it is simply, we're consuming it at such a rapid pace that we are making it more and more difficult to produce. And when that reaches 1-to-1, or when the return simply just isn't enough for people to be satisfied, energy for energy, all production will stop. All of it, completely. Done. We got a comment here from Victor. Oil is the blood of the planet. They want us to stay on oil and not develop different types of fuels. And no technology can be done without freedom in the state of slavery we're in. Yeah, that's very insightful. Yeah, they definitely have been holding us back from developing other technologies. And some of them are fantastic. Some of them are absolutely miraculous. Diana, great to see you. It's been a long time since we've actually sat down together. So yes, absolutely. They want us dependent on oil. I'm not going to get into all the reasons why. But the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is to help people grasp a little bit better why America left Afghanistan. Again, people have been talking about this more lately, but this is just this is old news. In 2010, I knew about the agreement, and by 2013, I knew about the exchange of energy in oil, and I knew about the Great Reset in 2015. I knew about the financial crisis. In 2009, I knew that the crash, the actual financial crash, occurred in 2008, and it was subsided by China. I'll talk about that briefly. So in 2008, the housing crisis, it was such a fraudulent operation that the markets were going to crash. And when I say crash, I mean like 1929 style, no money in the bank crash, okay? But that didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen, the reason it didn't happen was because, well, just pause for a second. It was this close. Wall Street executives, they were calling up their wives saying, take out all the money out of the bank account you possibly can, go to all the ATMs and just systematically take out all the money because it's probably not going to be there soon. And within 20 minutes of the banks literally having no liquidity, within 20 minutes, China called up and said, we'll save you. See, China had, for generations, they had a one-child policy. Nobody is supposed to have more than one child in their family. And it was also supposed to be males, so no females, no daughters. Well, that happened for way too long, and they had an entire 2 generations of horny men that had nothing to do and no one to have as a partner. So they were getting restless. In fact, they were facing a revolution, as a matter of fact. These restless boys had to have something to do. And so China said, why don't we keep them busy with work? So you can Google this. Google ghost cities. China built, I think it's something like a dozen cities, full infrastructure for entire populations. Millions of people could be housed in these cities. And they're ghosts. They're literally ghost cities. Nobody lives in them. The homeless have migrated to these cities because there's shelter. But otherwise, these things are absolutely empty. There's nothing to them. And what did that do? Well, it saved the global economy, is what it did. All of those cities that got built all in a short period of time by all those men, those resources came from Australia, United States, Canada, the major contributors of energy, steel, rubber, you name it. China saved the day. They saved the entire globe from collapsing. And there was kind of another reason why they did that, and that was because they just quite weren't ready to do the Great Reset. Okay, back then in 2015, no, I think it was started already called that by 2013. They called it the Global Currency Reset. That's what it was called then. Now it's just called the Great Reset. So that is, so China saved the day. They stopped the crash from actually resetting all the currencies back in 2008 and having a Dirty 30s event. They stopped it. But all they really did was kick the can down the road. And in fact, arguably, because it didn't fully happen at that time, the energy buildup of all of that terrible monetary policy, the energy buildup just built up more. And that energy is now ready to pop. Well, actually, that energy popped in March of 2019. March 2019, the yield curve inverted. Whenever that does not happen very often, it's only happened 3 times in history, and whenever it does, everything crashes within a year. Now, when it occurred in March of 2019, I said to myself, get ready. We've got less than a year. I believe we have a year, and we're going to see the beginning of the worst economic crisis that we've ever seen. And sure enough, February 21st, 2020 was the crash. But here's what's interesting. They said, and when I say they, I mean the media. I'll come back to that. I got to make a quick note about that because that's a really important point to make. Media said that it was because of COVID. Well, COVID, when it first came around, they didn't even call it that. It was just some virus. I don't even remember. SARS. It was a SARS-related virus. And when it was first in China, and China was suppressing the news regarding the virus, that's when I knew their plan. I knew what they were about to do. I'm not saying the virus is not real. But isn't it interesting that the virus comes around the same time as a financial crash that was scheduled for 2008 and got postponed by China and drug out through quantitative easing, not to mention more invasions of the United States into other countries where they technically exported their inflation. They were still printing like crazy. Ever since 2001, they were printing like crazy. 2008 ramped up those printing efforts where I think it was in 3 years they printed more than they had in the previous 200. And guess what? They've done it again. Since February 2020, those printing machines are just going, like they simply are going through the roof. And by printing, I just mean clicking buttons with mice to add some more zeros to people's accounts. That is the monetary policy at the moment. And that is careening to complete disaster. And what we experienced in February 2020 was simply the culmination of all of the bad policies coming together. And then after that, so March, April, May, things started picking back up again. In fact, in June, I think, was like the record breaking on the Dow Jones, which measures all of the economic movements around the world. That all happened. But this virus, this thing that got spread around, was the thing they blamed it on. They blamed the crash of February 2020 on the virus when it simply had nothing to do with the virus at all. What they did was, and I believe that they expertly got the virus to be more of an issue than it really is. And there's a whole another school of thought regarding the virus and origins, and there's paper trails showing lots of fascinating information about that. I encourage you to go look at that, but I want to stay on point with this particular broadcast. But that when the virus was announced and China was stifling the news about it back in December of 2019, I knew that that was what was going to be used as that was going to be what was blamed for the economic crash. February 2020 was where it hit hard, and they had to shut down the stock market and all that stuff. But then that was not technically the crash. That was like the warning shot, basically. Things picked back up again. Numbers look great. Dow Jones reached a record. How did that happen? Well, all they did was print, right? All they were doing was printing. So technically what we saw was the inflation, was the devaluation of their currency, and that's what made it look like things were so good. And that happens every single time there's a crash, guys. Every single time. So now what we're headed into is this flux of it's like a demand and supply flux, where there are some things that are in really huge supply, but they're not actually being shipped. We've got Susan here, who has a boutique shop, and she has so much inventory that is literally sitting at the dock, and they will not unload it. So we are in this weird suspense at the moment when it comes to supply and demand, because the supply is there. It's just not being delivered. So then the demand is high, even though the supply is high. And then, we've got reports of farmers that are destroying crops at the moment, threatened that if they do not destroy the crops, that the United States government is going to put Agent Orange on their crops. This is typical whenever there is prior to a state of panic, prior to a state of economic downturn or collapse, I should say. Governments like to try to take control of things, and so this isn't conspiracy theory, guys. This is just science. This is exactly how things go when these types of events occur. The next thing that we're probably going to see is one of the things we're going to see probably within the next year or two is going to be the prohibition of owning or buying and trading gold and silver. And so definitely stock up on that stuff, because that goes way up in price whenever it becomes illegal to possess. And you can use it as incredible trade. There's incredible leverage you have with trading that. So let's talk very briefly back about the media and what they do. So a lot of people think, oh yeah, those media, those are the communists, or those media, they're the bad guys because they're just lying all the time. We've got many of the ports being paid to hold. Yeah, that's correct, David. David on Facebook just commented saying that many of ports are being paid to hold containers for 30 to 60 days. Absolutely, they are. They're literally being told, don't unpack that, just leave it alone. And it's fascinating to watch, because again, there was nothing about this that was unexpected. There was nothing about this that we didn't know was already going to happen. It just, now we've got dates and times, basically. The media is an interesting beast. So there's a lot of people that rail against capitalism, right? Capitalism's so bad. Capitalism's so bad. Got to get rid of those capitalists, those capitalist pigs, And I got a great meme that I wish I had more skill in using this video software, because I could put an overlay of this meme. It's wonderful. But, those capitalist pigs, you're right. And then those same people that talk about how bad capitalism is, they consume media, the news, usually the mainstream news. And what's interesting about that is, how is it that they make money? What is it they do? Well, they're capitalists. In fact, they are probably one of the most they're amongst the most crooked capitalists there is, because they talk about how bad capitalism is, but by doing so, they get more views, to which they can charge for ad space for commercials and make more money. So they are just another capitalist venture, and they are just the most deceptive capitalist venture. But it's all capitalism. It's all it is, just people making money. But I always find it funny because, the media talks about how terrible capitalism is, but they are the most crony capitalists out there. And the people that complain about capitalism are the ones that consume that information the most. It's just very ironic, very weird. Anyways, I don't want to go too much on that. I want to go back to Afghanistan. Everybody's worried about, oh man, Biden, look what an idiot he is. He just left Afghanistan. Folks, what I was saying for the first 15 minutes of this podcast was that America had a deal to provide military might to Saudi Arabia in exchange for cheap oil. Two things. Number one, cheap oil's gone. Okay, oil's now expensive. And by expensive, I mean by the exchange of energy. The amount of oil, the amount of energy that you're pulling out of the ground compared to the amount of energy that you're using to pull it out of the ground is getting closer and closer to a 1-to-1 ratio. So first of all, cheap oil is no longer really that feasible. And what we've noticed since 2013, in fact, in 2013 began a multi-billion dollar, well, I don't know what the terminology is, hundreds of billions of dollars. I think it was 600 billion. I do apologize for not having that number in front of me. I think it was 600 to 800 billion dollars of oil was contracted between Iran, Russia, and China. And it was the first time that they all agreed that they weren't going to use the American dollar for that oil. And consequently, isn't it funny that that's right around the same time that Iran really got into the crosshairs of the United States? Why do you suppose that was? Was because, wait a second, you're supposed to be using the world reserve currency to trade oil. What do you think you're doing? Not using it. That's when Iran all of a sudden became an enemy. Now the question is, and it's a valid question, well, why didn't they, well, they demonized Russia, no question. And of course China as well, but not to the same degree. I mean, they weren't threatening to invade Russia or China because those are superpowers. Iran was not a superpower. So that's why they waged war against Iran. It was like, okay, oh, and by the way, on behalf of Saudi Arabia, right? Because again, they needed to keep their contract for keeping cheap oil. And if the states don't fulfill on their contract, well, that's a breach of contract, and Saudi Arabia can now charge market price for their oil. You guys see what's going on here? So Afghanistan, Biden didn't leave Afghanistan, okay? Biden didn't choose to leave Afghanistan, and he didn't choose to leave soldiers to die. He didn't do any of that. Folks, the most complicated decision that Biden can ever make nowadays is what flavor of ice cream to lick and what length of hair to sniff. Like, seriously. Get real. Biden had nothing to do with that. The contract's over. That's it. That's why we're going through what we're going through, okay? Economically, the United States cannot uphold their contract. That's it. So the United States are pulling out. That's it. Biden didn't choose that. He had nothing to do with that. The guy's incompetent and senile. Yeah. That was where I was really going with all this, was to let people know, stop blaming Biden. Is the guy good? No, can't stand the guy. But it's not his fault. It's not his fault. Those lives that were lost, those American lives, it's not on Biden. I'll talk more about whose fault it is in another video. Maybe if you come to the fireside chat this weekend, let me know if that's of interest to you. Just leave a comment and I'll tell you how to get involved in the fireside chat that I'm having this Saturday. I'll talk about who's to blame there. Nicole, he changed the date though. I'd like to, yeah. So maybe expand on that because I know that there's like dates being changed and stuff like that. Like what day are we leaving? What day is the what day are we actually pulling out? What day are we supposed to pull out? But I know that whoever's handlers are changed the date. Okay, yeah, I'll have to look into that, but I do know that the United States are not able to uphold their contract. I know their end of the deal, basically, the deal with Saudi Arabia. And so that's what's going on. That's why they left all the gear and everything because they don't even need it because they got no contracts to fulfill because they simply A, they can't, and B, because and since they can't, the whole thing with Saudi Arabia is now all done and done deal. Victor, yes, Joe is a zombie. Yeah. Okay. So what's next? What can we expect next? Two things. Number one, this is also something that is newly popping up a lot. I'm seeing multiple videos of people who are into economics, trading, investments, and they're talking about how, well, now China's said that they're going to be coming forward with a world reserve currency and it's going to be wonderful. Folks, we knew China was going to do that in 2009. We knew it because since that time, you take a look at the amount of economic influence that China has gained since that time, the amount of countries that have China as the primary as their primary importer, as in that's the primary country where they import their goods and services from. The amount of domination that China has commanded globally was all part of their initiative to have that world reserve currency. Because Maria's coming to Fireside Chat. Awesome. Fireside Chat this Saturday. If you want in, leave a message. I'll let you know how to get involved and where it is and all that stuff. Physical Fireside Chat. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this Fireside Chat by the internet here. This is actually by a fire. Might even whip out the guitar, and we're going to actually be visiting, talk about some deeper level stuff. So what's next? We knew for a long time that China was going to come forward with the world reserve currency, and that's what they just announced recently. But that's what they're going to be doing, guys. That didn't just pop out of nowhere. This is decades of planning, really, decades of planning went into this. So China's going to come out with the world reserve currency. And it's going to be digital. It's going to be a blockchain-based. They're saying it's going to be blockchain-based. Whenever a government says something, I usually take that with a grain of salt, and I try to find some other truths that could be there. Because typically speaking, when they say something, they mean something else. But they are claiming it's going to be blockchain. I do believe that blockchain is a fantastic technology. But here's the thing. The world runs on oil. We don't have the technology, widely distributed technology, to replace it. And if you don't trust me on that, I'm going to ask you a question. Even with electric cars, where do you get the energy to charge those batteries? It's not electricity. Because the electricity has to come from somewhere. That energy of electricity has to come from somewhere, and it's not electricity. We don't have perpetual electricity. It's oil. Oh no, it's coal. Okay, how do you get the coal out of the ground? Oh no, it's batteries, lithium. Yeah, how do you get the lithium out of the ground? I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to imagine for a moment that you have to drive a truck. I don't know, pickup truck, for example. What's the average weight of a pickup truck? 3,500, 4,500 pounds probably. And what you're going to do is that you're going to push it. Okay? You're not going to be driving it. You're not going to be putting fuel in it. You're going to be pushing it down the highway. Here's a key point. Sustained for 100 kilometers, you're going to be pushing it at 100 kilometers per hour. So push that vehicle for an hour at 100 and take it 100 kilometers. Do it. And tell me whether or not, and do it however you want. You can do it physically if you want. You can do it with batteries if you want. You can do it however you want, however you see fit. And tell me whether or not it's going to be cheaper than the $22, $23 of fuel that it costs to do the same damn thing. What do we have to replace it that's widely available, commercially accessible? What is it? I'm all ears. I know that there are fantastic technologies out there. I know some of them have been developed and that they're ready to go, but they're not here right now. And I believe that we have about 5 more years of oil. Again, not that it's gone forever, but that it simply isn't going to be wildly profitable to get that oil out of the ground because it costs too much energy. And we're not getting enough energy out of the ground to compensate us for the work, the hard work it takes to get it out of the ground. And I'm happy to debate this. I know that there are a lot of people who live in Alberta that will probably be watching this simply because by nature of the people that are on my list. And so they may, kind of kick and scream a little bit with this idea of oil not being something that we can feasibly bring out of the ground. I'm not saying that it's going to be gone. I'm saying, like I said for the first 10, 15 minutes, the oil simply isn't brought out of the ground with the same amount of efficiency. We're getting more, we get more efficient, but we're not keeping up with the amount of energy that we're bringing out of the ground. That's the problem. So what are we going to replace it with? I don't know. I'm all ears. But it sure as heck isn't going to be lithium. It's going to have to be something else. Sure as heck isn't going to be electricity. Where are we going to... You need oil to make diapers, for crying out loud. And so few people know how to use cloth diapers, it's not even funny. They're going to be, literally, there's going to be swaths of people that have no idea how to live without oil. And think about it, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, if you described what was possible with oil, people would look at you like you were crazy. A very short blip of time ago, everything is made out of oil. Yes, Nicole, your cell phone, textiles, this seat that I'm on, yes, that is not real leather. It's a petroleum-based product. Plastics, these here, not possible without oil. This here, not possible without oil. This computer that I'm using right now to cast to you guys, everything about this, the electricity that keeps the power running on my computer, all of it, oil. And we don't have anything to replace it. For those of you who are just coming on, I'm seeing a lot of new icons saying that people are coming on. I'm not saying oil's going away. I'm simply saying, and you can watch the replay, the amount of energy that we get from oil is quickly reaching a 1-to-1 ratio on the amount of energy we consume to get it. I'm just trying to find all kinds of different ways to explain that. So what's next? China says they're coming out with their own currency. It's going to save the world yet once again. What kind of trends are we going to be seeing over the next 6 to 12 months? Well, one thing is for certain. I do believe that the fiat currency system, the one that we are currently subjected to, which is all based on what? US dollar. I mean, think about it. Why does Facebook do that? It makes me look so weird. Anyway, what is it? What is it that we compare the Canadian dollar to, or the Great Britain pound, or the Swiss franc, or the Chinese yuan, or like all these currencies, when they're exchanged on the foreign exchange, what are we comparing them to? The US dollar. That's right. The US dollar is now worthless. Back in 2013, that oil deal that I told you about, that marked the beginning of the end. Since that time, we have someone on YouTube that can teach people how to use cloth diapers. That sounds like someone that would be, that's Maria. Yes, of course you know how to do that. So, cryptocurrencies. What was I going with this? No. Oh my goodness, lost my train of thought, guys. Oh, I know. So, with the trends that we're going to see coming up, the financial system that we currently have right now, all of these currencies are coupled with the US dollar. That's how we compare them. That's how we trade them. If you want to take your money and turn it, let's say, for instance, you're going to go to, I don't know, Dubai. You're going to need to change it into a dinar. When you go to the bank and you take your Canadian dollars, or you're taking your Mexican peso, or you're taking your Swiss franc, or you're taking whatever the case may be, and you're maybe it's the euro itself, and you go ahead and go to the bank and you say, I would like some dinar, please. The bank has to turn it into US dollars first and then turn it into dinar. That's how it goes. That whole thing is coming down, okay? And I'm a forex trader. And the foreign exchange itself, I believe, is going to be non-existent within the next 6 to 12 months. Why do I say that? Because all of the countries out there that had the ability to repatriatize their gold, they did it. And there's a lot that did not get paid their gold. That's another topic. Thank you, America, for failing to fulfill your duties with gold. Your obligations, rather. Why did they do that? Because China has been talking about doing this currency thing for a long time, and they've all said, for as long as they've been talking about it, they've been saying that they're going to use gold to back it. So all these countries are repatriatizing their gold. And in fact, they've done it at such an alarming rate that the United States treasuries, the US treasuries that countries were holding as, investments, they are all being dumped. Okay, the last of the largest countries finished dumping the last of their US treasuries, I think last spring or last summer. It's China. They sold the last of it off. They don't have any more. Right now, the states are only in existence, like the only reason they have an economy at all right now, and that they aren't, that the dollar is not completely destroyed, is that there are enough people around, walking around, thinking that it's worth something. It's the only reason it exists right now. But in the next 6 to 12 months, that's going to all change. People are going to realize very quickly that it means absolutely nothing. In fact, I have a suspicion that by the end of this year, if you're holding on to US bonds, you're going to be financially ruined. So if you're holding US bonds, you might want to find some sucker out there to buy them off of you. And unfortunately, it's not going to be smart money that buys it. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to find someone that has the ability to buy that. Especially if this video gets out. Not that I think it will. My audience is pretty small. And so, that's the one thing. U.S. economy is coming to a close. It is not going to be, already isn't, the world reserve currency. People think it is, but it's not being traded as that. These countries have all made deals. They are trading gold for oil. And when that comes to, I'm going to say a lull. It doesn't come to a stop. It's going to come to a lull. We're going to be witnessing a lot of turmoil a lot of turmoil. But good things are happening too. I am not going to get into that. That's for fireside chat, guys. And I know that I make it sound like I'm selling a fireside chat, which in a sense I am, because you do have to pay to be there. But it's cheap, and the reason I'm doing it that way is because I want to make sure that the content for today stays really, really closely related to the topics at hand, which is the geopolitical movements that we're noticing in the world right now. And I'm not even going into that much detail. There's so much more that I could go into. I could talk about the heroin as well. And yeah. Anyway, not going to go too much longer. We've got pretty much everything covered that I wanted to on that side. Oh, trends. So I do believe that we're going to see blockchain continue to be a prominent investment for a lot of people. I trade on blockchain. I do not hold it. And the reason why is because we come back to the whole energy crisis that I alluded to. If there is an energy crisis, there will be a lot of blackouts, and people aren't going to be able to access their money if it's in cryptos. And so because it's in cryptos and people aren't going to be able to access it, it's going to lose its value. Okay? So I trade it. I don't hold on to it and invest it. That's a personal choice. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. Obviously, do whatever makes the most sense for you. But unless we have an energy, remember the pushing the truck example. Unless you have unless you can come up with something that is going to replace all of the consumption of oil, and how much? We're talking, we're approaching 200 million barrels a day, if I'm not mistaken. That's how much oil we consume. Let me just double check that number. How much oil does the world use a day? 100. Oh, we're looking at barrels per day consumed, 97. So just shy of 100 million. Just shy of 100 million. Yeah, I was thinking of it. I was thinking of annually. What were we looking at? Yeah, 35 billion barrels a year. We're looking at 97 million plus barrels oil per day. You show me what's going to replace that energy consumption, and I will be happy to start investing in crypto technologies, blockchain included. But unless that energy source is replaced, no, I'm not investing. I'm trading it, and that's a big difference. It's quick in and out. I don't hold a position much more than about 3% of my account, my portfolio, and that's just basic risk management right there. That's one trend. Another trend that we're going to be seeing, lithium. So as much as we have this energy crisis coming forward because of the incompetence of people who make decisions, let's use Biden as an example. His incompetence says, oh, we're going to make 50% of the vehicles have to be electric by, 2025 or something like that? So that means lithium is going to be a massively good investment. If you can get into some companies, or if you can get into maybe an index of companies that are that are mining lithium, you're going to be in a good position for the next 2, 3, probably 5 to 10 years. That's going to be really good. Copper is also going to be good because copper is so much used in electronics right now. If you can get into biotech as well, biotech is going to be incredibly, already this year, wildly profitable. Obviously things like mRNA technology. But if you can get into an index that does that as well, if you have questions about that, just go ahead and you leave a comment, and I'll follow up with you either with direct message or a way to get in touch with me, and I can tell you exactly which indexes I think are good there. But yeah, there are some great opportunities in biotech. Metals, gold and silver. So don't ever think that gold and silver is an investment. I don't like it when people to refer to it as an investment. So don't. It's not. It's a hedge. Okay. So when inflation hits, what happens is people gravitate towards something, anything that holds its value. And historically speaking, that's been gold and silver. And so while it may look like an investment, it isn't. Because you think, oh, it's a great investment because look at how much the price is going up. Remember, the price going up on something does not mean that it's increasing in value, especially when you're going into an inflationary period. The inflation right now in virtually every country is rising incredibly fast. And as a result, that means that the value of that currency is dropping. So right now we're sitting at what is 24 something US for silver. It should be somewhere around the $240 mark based on the price of gold. And even that's being suppressed with paper contracts. So the pricing is manipulated through flooding the market with paper contracts. For every ounce of gold that's above the ground right now that has been mined, recorded mined, for every ounce that's above the ground right now, there's 300 people that think they own that ounce. And it's because of what we would call a Ponzi scheme. People are complaining about network marketing and pyramid schemes like, what do they call it? Gifting clouds or whatever else. Guys, that's nothing. That's nothing. If you're upset about those things, if you're like, oh, stay away from me with your network marketing pyramid, if you have that much against pyramids, what the heck have you been using money for? Like all the currency that you have right now is built on a Ponzi scheme. So anyway, that's commentary. But that's the truth. Gold and silver, the physical gold and silver is going to be worth a lot. Why? Because if you have an ounce of gold, which isn't much, but it's expensive, but it's not very much, doesn't take up much room. Think about what would happen to the price if 300 people suddenly realized they don't have it, you do. Supply and demand. It's going to go up in price. Now again, because of the hyperinflationary period that we're going to be going through over the next 2 to 5 years, I'm thinking, that is what you're going to want to have as a hedge. Again, this is not an investment. It's a hedge. You're going to be protecting yourself from the inflation by having something that maintains its value. How do I know it maintains its value? The simplest analogy that's been used for decades is that an ounce of gold, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, like a centurion, a Roman centurion could actually get himself well dressed for an ounce of gold. Well, today, an ounce of gold is approximately 18 whatever US. Well, that would dress you very finely. So the value doesn't change. Okay, it's a very, very stable currency, and it's really the only thing that has ever stood the test of time when it comes to money and the purchasing power behind it. Because regardless of what your economy is doing, that ounce of gold is likely going to be able to outfit you with the same thing as it did 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago. Things for things. Do not compare. Going into this, guys, shift your mentality. You are not going to be able to use traditional means of valuation. Okay? We are accustomed to thinking, oh, that's worth X amount of dollars and that's worth X amount of time, blah, blah, blah. You have to get away from that mentality altogether now, because the money system is done. It's over. We're just witnessing the after effects of the defeat. That's really what we're witnessing at the moment. So that is the first thing, or one of the trends I want to talk about. Next thing is the other financial system. So we've got a massive war that's happening right now, and if you haven't noticed, it's been getting intense. And this war is turning into for the last 50 years, arguably, 50 years, it's been currency wars, so economic wars, where the country is going to just go in, like U.S. predominantly. They would go in and they would devalue the currency of the country that needed democracy, and would then go ahead. They would go ahead and invade, inflate their currency to oblivion, and replace their currency with their own. That's how they were able to export their inflation, simply by just increasing the amount of demand around the world for all of the money that they were printing. That's how they were able to offset the inflation for as long as they have. That's why down in the States, they enjoyed great prices on gas and vehicles and their toys and all that stuff, was because the U.S. was exporting their inflation to other countries. So that's coming to a close. Where is it going with that? Oh, my goodness. Inflation. I got a comment here from Victor. Why we don't have inflation? Because the Feds and the dollar lost much of its value meantime. Yes, you are correct. The inflation was offset by the Federal Reserve and their initiatives to have the government invade other countries and export that inflation. Oh my goodness. Where was I going with this? There's going to be another trend. Oh, financial systems. So that financial system that relied on the United States going around and exporting their inflation in order to keep a stable economy, that whole system coming to a close, and with the Chinese government coming out saying that they're going to be starting up their world reserve currency, that is going to be a system of finance, okay? But it's not going to be the only one. There are more than enough people on this planet to recognize that the culture of China and the geopolitical position of China is not good, okay? There are even talks about, as much as the Chinese economy has dominated the world, there is a lot of talk about how much debt they have as a result of their empire building. They don't have a good financial position. And there are a lot of people who recognize that and have actually started working on another financial system that would be separate from the Chinese world reserve currency, basically as an alternate reality to the mainstream, okay? And what we're going to be watching happen, because that's where I was going, these countries go around and they invade other countries. All of that was purely economical. So we were witnessing an economic war, okay? The next war, the war that we're in right now, the war that started, is an economic war. And in order for that, I talked about it earlier on. In order for this economic war to be launched, they needed an enemy. And the enemy was coronavirus. And I'm not here to debate whether or not it's real. I'm here to tell you the financial crash that anybody that knew anything about economy knew that this was about to happen. We just didn't know they were going to blame what happened on Corona. That's the long and short of it. You see my eyes getting twitchy. I'm like, that's how dizzying it is to me. The frustration for me is that people don't see this. Folks, this great reset was always going to happen. It was called the global currency reset back in 2012, 2013, maybe even before that. That's when I started learning about it. This was all supposed to happen. Every last bit of it. I just didn't know, and I just didn't know they were going to use the brilliant plan of using a pandemic. I should have known, but the pandemic, whether it's real or not, is not the point. The point is that's what was being used as that was what was being blamed on this economic crisis that everybody knew was going to be happening anyway. Okay, so new financial system. You are definitely going to want to have, you're definitely going to want to come to the fireside chat. First of all, you're going to want to come to the fireside chat because that's where I'm going to go into great detail about what the new financial system really looks like. But you are going to be incredibly encouraged by the prospect of what this financial system is going to be able to do for people and how liberating it will be. Remember, we are in a financial war. It means that one side is going to be looking to enslave you and another side is going to be looking to free you. That's how wars go. You've got two factions. One of them wants to be free and one of them wants to oppress and enslave. That's what war is. In an economic war, there's going to be a side that wants to enslave you economically, and there's going to be a side that wants to free you economically. And I can tell you right now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you stick with me, you're going to do great. All of the shortages, all of the turmoil, the hyperinflation, all that stuff is not something that I am even remotely afraid of. Not because I've done tons of prep. I don't even have what I want to be able to be fully prepared the way that I envisioned. I'm okay with that because I know enough about the new financial system to be okay. I'm going to be fine. So will you. So will you. I just really encourage you to be extremely vigilant and mindful of the other financial system. And avoid it. Because it will be tempting. People are going to get very tempted by it. And I'm riding the line of getting censored, I know. So I'm not going to go much further. But I really do encourage you all of you, to be encouraged. There are so many good things happening. So many good things happening that are going to help you, that are going to set you up for success. And my hope is that this information over the last hour has contributed to your comprehension of what's really going on in the world and what we are headed into. And some of the things that you can do to protect yourself. Right now, in the interim, I would not hesitate to get more gold and silver. If you don't have it already, if you don't have it already, just get a little bit. And if you don't have much money, folks, I know exactly what that's like. I was homeless from the end of 2015 through most of 2016. I know what it's like to not have money. But I can tell you right now that in the period of time that we're going to be headed, historically, whenever these kinds of catastrophes, financial collapses occur, whenever that happens, I don't have any here to show you right now, but an ounce of silver, I don't think I have it. An ounce of gold in Venezuela, where there's absolute, like it's collapsed. They've collapsed and they're still so corrupt, they're not getting out of it yet. And they might not even until who knows when. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. It's terrible, the position that they're in. But in Venezuela, an ounce of gold can buy you a city block of real estate. Okay? Because of the hyperinflationary period that they're in, that's how much it's worth. That's how much it gets you. In Venezuela, an ounce of silver will buy you food for a month because of the inflationary period that they've been. And it's been that way for years. 2 or 3 years at least. An ounce of silver will pay for 1 month of food. When you are going into a crisis such as we are, if all you do is save some money for a month or two, I don't know, maybe cancel your cable. It's garbage anyways. I haven't had TV since, I don't know when. When did I stop? Well, I never really technically did have TV except for Rabbit Ears TV when I was a kid. That's it. Don't stop paying for cable TV. Way more important things in life. Take that money, save it for 2 months, get yourself a sleeve of silver. 25 ounces. That's 2 years of food. That's it. Do it. You know what's 25 times 25? Math is not an exact science, and so I have to actually go through the math and do it because I'm terrible at. I'm really good at math, but I'm not good at calculating it. Like I can do a lot of things with it. Really analytical, but okay. So yeah, it's not much. It's not much money. Go get some silver. One sleeve of silver, and that will get you enough to last you for about 2 years of food. And I'm not saying this because I think you should be scared. I'm saying $625. I'm saying that there is a way to, very easy way to get prepared. If that's all you do, you will survive, and you will survive well. Okay? There are a lot of shortages. I know you see the videos out there, but that is not even something to be scared of, because simultaneously, while all that chaos is happening, simultaneously, great things are happening. Here in Edmonton area, we've got farmers, we've got producers, we've got just other service providers, we've got nutritionists, we've got all kinds of people, and they're all ready to go. We're setting up a co-op as well, a cooperative, where people are working together to actually make this happen. Saying, I've got this. How can I help the community with this? We're looking at getting a bunch of bees. We're looking at all kinds of cool things. And this isn't, over the top conspiracy theory, prepper. Like we're not going crazy like that. We just recognize that where we're headed right now, what's happening geopolitically, is going to create shortages, and we know how to stop that from happening. We've got people who are willing to. My butcher, for example, said he'd had no problem receiving silver in exchange for food. That's awesome. Get connected with some communities that do the same thing. That's how you get prepared for this. $625 US. There are people that spend that in a month on one person, just with groceries. That $625 US could last you 2 years of food in the situation that we're headed. Stay away from the Chinese government's financial system. Partner up with people that care about you, that love you, want what's best for you. Right now, more than ever, you want to connect with people. Connect with people. Communities are how we're going to survive all of this. What else? Oil. There are a lot of pensions out there. Pensions. I should have been talking about this a little bit more. Pensions, folks. Most of them are diversified in oil. And by that just means various industries, various indexes, but they're all revolving around oil. You aren't going to lose them next month. Although in October, we're probably going to see the quarterly reports on the bonds, and that could cause some problems. But you're going to want to figure out something else to do with your pension, okay? Because you aren't going to be able to cash out. You aren't going to be able to cash it out. If you plan on having it for any more than 5 years, you aren't going to have it, okay? And possibly even sooner. There are some people who are of the mind that by the end of next year, none of that's going to exist. There were some people that said at the beginning of this year that they'd be surprised if we make it to the end of 2021 with the same financial system. But I do believe that we're going to be waiting for China to roll out their world reserve currency. And then I also believe at that time that the pandemic will be over, miraculously. I believe. I could be wrong. That is definitely out there on the limb of speculation. But that's what I believe. What are other main points? U.S. contract in the Middle East where they provide military might to Saudi Arabia. That's done. That is no longer. That's why Afghanistan got abandoned. And as I think Victor was saying that, the U.S. gear is going to be retro-engineered by the Chinese. Yep, that's right. All of it is just done. That's it. Out of all of these things, let me tell you something. If we go back to the Dirty 30s, there were a lot of people that suffered. Do you want to know why they suffered? I will tell you why they suffered. They suffered because they paid attention to the media. They suffered because they paid attention to their broke uncle. They suffered because they trusted that the government was going to subsidize their wheat. They suffered because they were not self-governing. They were looking to someone else for their government. More on that in another video. But there were people throughout the Dirty 30s and even in the early 80s when there was another economic crash. There were people who made a lot. There were people who profited very, very well, and they were set financially for the rest of their lives and even were able to pass their wealth on to children and grandchildren. Most of them don't know how to maintain that wealth, but that's another topic. The point is, we are in the most powerful position right here, right now. Incredibly exciting. It really, really is. There are so many cool things that you can do that you could never do before, simply because of where we are in history, where we are with the information age. The things that you can do right now, the opportunities that are available to you at your fingertips, literally at your fingertips. Grab your phone, right in your hand is an opportunity. If you want some help with that, let me know. Be more than happy to coach you and find an opportunity for you. Maybe it's a small business you can start. There is tons of demand for local business right now. Private message me if that's something that's of interest to you, or leave a comment. And I'll show you how to get started. Something, anything. Doesn't matter what. Folks, the truth will set you free. And the truth is, bad things are about to happen. But that also means good things are about to happen as well. Those two things, they run on parallel tracks and they usually arrive at the same spot. You just can skip a track. Just jump from one rail to the other. The opportunities are absolutely staggeringly beautiful. And I'm excited to be here with all of you as we explore this next revolution. This is what it is. We are experiencing it. Yeah, it is. It is a cultural revolution. It's a medical revolution, financial revolution, industrial revolution. All of it is happening at the same time. It's exciting. I want to thank you, all of you, for watching. This is not going to be up on Facebook. When I'm done this, it goes away forever. It's only going to be found on my YouTube, so definitely subscribe there. If you would like some more of this kind of content, I'm going to be presenting more like this. I don't have a website where you can opt in, but I'm going to be also speaking on Wednesday evening. This is going to be more going into a localized event, talking about what we can do here in Canada. To position ourselves properly for what's coming. That's going to be on Wednesday. Leave a comment if it's something of interest to you. I'll make sure that you get the link for that event. I'm not the one hosting it. I'm being a guest panelist on a broadcast. And then, of course, like I said earlier today, I've got the fireside chat this weekend. Happy to have you there. And that's, just comment if that's something you're interested in. I'll tell you how to get involved in that and give you the location. Physical meeting around a fire. Well into the night we go and talk about we talk about the coolest stuff. It's awesome. That's it. Take care, everybody. See you on the flip side.